My name is Stan Williams. I've coached quite a few years for Brothers. One year that really stands out in my mind was when I coached the 1981 A-Grade side for Cairns Brothers. I thought at the time that the club had turned because 2 years earlier I coached the A-Grade side to win the 1979 Premiership. The club hadn't won one for 17 years. And I think that sort of started the club off on some very good years after that. And when I had the coaching job for 81, I thought this is a good opportunity now to really win it again, because the club had turned the corner off the field with our leagues club and our licence club going really well. We needed to win more premierships. 1981 season started off badly. Those days we always had a New Year's Eve cabaret, and we started training the first Tuesday in the year. Unfortunately, we had a bad incident which ended up in a bit of a brawl. Players were playing up. I think had a bit too much to drink. Anyway, we had a couple of players were barred, and a couple were basically barred for life. Well, I thought, well, what a great way to start a season off. Because in a few days' time we were training, and I had the job of trying to get everybody together. And of course the oppositions, I won't name their names, but they were saying that the word had got around town that Brothers are had it this year. They might win a game, they're fighting amongst each other, and there's a lot of disharmony and that. So I suppose in a way I sort of played on that, and I lined up all the players and I told them what the opposition thought we haven't got a chance. But at the end of the year, we had all our teams in the grand final: A-Grade, Reserve Grade, C-Grade, and the under-18s. Winning A, Reserve Grade undefeated, C-Grade undefeated, and the under-18s just missing out by one try and a conversion. How'd we do it? We weren't supposed to be any good that year. And I put it down to the fact that we had a big job to do. The club had just organised playing fields at Beacon Street, and we needed somewhere to train in 1982. So I was the one that had to organise the works to be done so we could have somewhere to train the next year. So how are we going to do it? Well, we're going to have to do it voluntary, and I organised all the players and supporters, and they all turned up, and we had a working bees in the off season then, before the season started. And one of the big jobs we had to do was get our oval ready for the next year. We had our last year at our training grounds at Lion Street. And I think what helped quite a bit was the fact that all the players were involved and supporters. And one of the main things we had to do was to have the property fenced So I said, the theme for this year is defence. That's got to be done. Otherwise, no matter how much work we put in our grounds, we could have hoons from the other clubs coming up and doing figure eights in the middle of the field. So defence is the thing. When they actually brought in the other teams, they were going to play home and away games. So us and Ivanhoes used to play our home games at Parramatta Park, right? And then went over to the cyclodrome because it was too expensive there, so we wanted somewhere else to be. We trained at Line Street in 81, but we needed our own home grounds. We used to have to take everything over there, so we wanted to have our own home grounds with our own clubhouse. And we then started to build in 82, right? 81 we got the grounds right, and we were able to train there, and we were able to build our clubhouse in. It was 82, and we had the opening, of course, in 83. There's quite a bit more in 81. Like to me as a coach, 81 I thought was my best year as a coach, because mainly for the club, because we were started off the year badly, and my job was to try and get the club going, mainly the players, and we all year everything just happened to happen. We ended up being most of the year we ended up being either one or two, and our last game we played against Mariba, and we got beat, which was the last game in the fixtures. So by that having to happen, there was 3 teams were levelled. Atherton had been number 1, it's about all year. So they were number 1 at the end. And when we went into the semi-finals, number 1 was going to play number 2. So at the moment we had 3 teams level. Number 2 was us, Kangaroos and Ivanhoes. So the league at the time, like nowadays, they have a countback, but the league with their wisdom, no, we're not going to have countbacks, we're going to have playoffs. So what they did, they put the 3 clubs in a hat, and the first 2 out were playing off for number 2. So our name came out, so the Kangaroos. So that was it. We had to play Kangaroos. He was going to be number 2 to play Atherton on the weekend. And the playoff had to be on a Wednesday night. Nowadays, the league is very concerned about player welfare, but in those days, who gives a stuff about players? And so what happened, we had to play Kangaroos. And of course, Kangaroos were always saying, brothers never ever beaten us in a playoff. So I latched onto that, and I told the players, I think we might forfeit because we can't beat Rees in a playoff. And I waited the reaction when the players said, bullshit. So that's all I wanted to hear. So we played them on a Wednesday night. What a night that was. We beat Roos. Oh, I can't remember the score now, it's 40 years ago, but it was a fair bit. Certainly over 15 points. And during the night, we had 2 of our committee men, Bob Crane and Greg Ryan. They were the ones involved, and I didn't know what was going on because I was with the team. We're selling. There was no bar there at the Parramatta Park, so they thought, oh, they might take over a couple of cartons of beer, and they were selling it to the public. Anyway, unfortunately, a Kangaroos officials got onto it. Just happened to be a police officer, and they were taken away, taken to jail, locked up, confiscated Bob Crane's ute, and so that was the night, and we won. And I think that's what actually helped us out, because the players were right on. They were raring to go. And I had, what made it worse for Rouge too, I had, towards the end of the game, I think we had about, not long to go at the end of the game, so I took 4 players off and I put 4 on players. And they happened to be all Mully brothers. And I heard after the game, they heard the Rouge saying, "Oh no, they're putting all the Mullies on now." They said to me, "What do you want us to do, coach?" I said, "Just go out and bash them." They couldn't get out there quick enough. Yeah, and I think that game that night really put us in a good frame of mind. We've had it hard all year, and they were really rare to go. Anyway, we played Atherton on the weekend, because everybody thought, Atherton's got to win easy, but we did. We knocked Atherton off, so then we went straight into the grand final. Had to play Atherton again because they won their game and they went into the grand final with us. And I said earlier about the big thing was at Beard Street, our work at Beard was defence, and that's what we needed in the grand final. As everybody knows, you win grand finals on defence. And we beat Atherton quite easy. I think at half time we were leading by about 20 points. But anyway, we won the game by about 8 points at the end. But this is where the defence really came in, because our penalty count at half time was 11-2, and at full time it was 22-3. And the boys had to tackle, and they did. To me, the club was on its way, because we made the grand final again the next year. Missed out, but we won it the year after. But we won. So every year we won the club championships. We hold the record of having won more club championships than any other club. But in the grand final, just to say how confident our players were, I turned up at the grand final, all the boys were there. I walked into the shed, and the captain handed me a Guernsey to put on. It was a white Guernsey with blue trimmings, and across the front of it said 1981 Premiers. We hadn't even played. I said, that's how confident they were. And I was going to put it on. I was very superstitious. But I put it on straight away after the game. That was a really good win for the club. And as far as I'm concerned, it turned the club around, because we had so many good young players. The year before we won the under-20s, and from then on we had all the young players coming up, and the club just kept winning games all the time after that, which was great. Early in the year we were lucky to have a couple of players, which always happened every year. People get transferred in their jobs and that. And one very good player, who I think is in my mind, has been the best fullback the club's had, with the name of Chris Taylor. He was transferred up. I think he worked for the Westpac Bank, and he turned up, and those early games, those years, the Cairns District Rugby League always had a round of pre-season games, and that was good because we always seemed to have a lot of new faces, people transferred up in their jobs, whatever, they made school teachers or bank Johnnies or whatever. And we also had another player come from Toowoomba named Laurie Kavanagh, and he was a hooker, and he was one of the best hookers we've had, as far as I'm concerned. Besides, quite a few years ago, we had the Australian hooker playing for Brothers in Brian Fitzsimmons. Well, I was coaching way back in 1966. Brian represented Australia that year, and the year after I played for Queensland, I think about 17 times. And he was our number one hooker for the club. Now Laurie, in my mind, because I played with Brian, also as a coach, and Laurie as a coach, and he was a very, very similar player. And we also had another front rower, Adrian Smith, who actually came over from Ivanhoe's. The year before, I coached the Cairns Rugby League's Foley Shield team, and he was one of my front rowers. So I asked him, I'm going to coach Brothers next year, would you like to have it coming over with us? So we did, and he was a very good player, because he got a nickname as Womble. We had the captain of our side was Dale Scaly Graham, and he was very strong on nicknames. Our trainer at the time too was an old chap, older than a lot of us, by the name of Ian Ellis, and of course Scaly called him Fossil, because he was that old, he reckons. So our whole team, our fullback was Taylor. Our wingers, we had two wingers. That time in 1981, the Newtown had two really brilliant wingers, Blacklock and Ferguson. So our wingers, the Duck and Rossi Brown. So Scaly called them Blacklock and Ferguson. And of course he was a centre and a captain, and he was Scaly. And his partner was Mick Volpe. So that was Volpe. Our 5'8", and as far as I'm concerned, our halves was the best halves since I've been associated with the club. One of the best. And our 5'8" was, his nickname was Cranky, Steve Penny. And the halfback, of course, was our club legend, Mick Aegis. His nickname was Let Ass. So our back line, we had Let Ass, Cranky, Volpe, Scaly, Blacklock and Ferguson, and Taylor. Very good. That's how we won the grand final. And in the grand final, our lock was Horse. Horse, he took over from our normal lock, who got injured in our last game against Mareeba. Wolf, who was one of our best players. He represented North Queensland and went to play for Valleys in 1982. And he also played with Wally Lewis and Brian Niebling for Valleys. Our other second rower was one of our best second rows, Mick, the solicitor, and Peter Shervey, who played the year before the under-20s, a very good tackler. I used to try and get both of them going. Shervs and Horse, at half time, they used to have a bit of a competition going, who did the most tackles? The first thing they asked as they come in, what's the tackle count? And that's one of the reasons why we won the grand final, because they're just unbelievable defenders. And of course, in our front row, we had Wombles, Laurie Kavanagh, and another very, very good player who actually came from Buckalden. His name was Miles Plump. Of course, he got the name of Peachy. We had a really good team. Our reserves were actually made up, those days, the reserves to the A-grade, they came from the reserve grade, you know. And we had Cole Mully, Barry Mully, Royce Mully, and Gnarly Mully. You know. We had some really strength there, real club men. I think that's the reason that we won. Everybody was on side. They were all focused, ready to win a premiership. Yeah, because I forgot our hooker was Lol. everybody. Yeah. Because I had a few nicknames myself. One I wasn't very happy about. They just called me Pudley. I had Pudley and Chululu and Chew. Nuggets, the under-18s were undefeated, but they lost the grand final by just about 5 points. Strangely enough, just goes to show you the culture of the club. You know, like you read about in the papers, the NRL, about our club culture, all that. You know, I mean, we know all about culture, our club. In '81, he was an example. There was an under-18 player, her name was Scotty Moore. They were told not to stay home on a Friday night. No, they had to go out. And he got in a bit of a brawl. He got his jaw broken. They had to get it wired up. And he insisted on sitting on the line with his jaw broke up. That's how much he loved the club. And he actually took the field at the end for about 5 minutes with his jaw wired up. Unbelievable. He is now the president of our Alboys, which goes to show you that. But that was '81, and as far as I'm concerned, that was our best year. 40 years ago, I might have got a few things mixed up, but